Dawn, the ancestral sword of House Dane, is as strong and sharp as Valyrian steel, but pale as milk glass, and said to have been forged from the metal of a fallen star. Though the weapon has remained in the possession of House Dane for thousands of years, it could not be inherited, often remaining at their stronghold of Starfall, waiting for the emergence of a knight of their house, worthy of the blade and title, Sword of the Morning. The last known wielder of the sword was Sir Arthur Dane, the Kingsguard who died fighting Ned Stark and Howland Reed at the Tower of Joy, after which Lord Stark returned Dawn to Starfall to await the next Sword of the Morning. The sword of young Prince Joffrey Baratheon, Lion's Tooth, was a specially sized double-edged longsword made of castle-forged blue steel. It was lost when Arya Stark disarmed the young prince and threw it in a river. Lion's Tooth was later replaced by Hearteater, named before the Battle of the Blackwater, though he never actually used the sword, perhaps fearing embarrassment for his lack of skill, and so used a crossbow for personal executions. The Valyrian steel sword of House Stark, Ice, was named after the legendary blade of their house during the Age of Heroes, and had been with the Starks of Winterfell for 400 years. Said to have a dark and smoky appearance, the sword was taken from Lord Stark after his arrest, and given to Sir Ilyn Payne, who used it in the execution of the Northern Lord, after which it was reforged into the Lannister swords, Widow's Wail and Oathkeeper. After the death of King Robert Baratheon, Joffrey Baratheon inherited the throne. At the wedding of King Joffrey to Lady Margaery Tyrell, Lord Tywin Lannister presented the boy king with Widow's Wail, a Valyrian steel longsword forged by Tobo Mott, a Kahori-trained master armorer. Created from the ancestral greatsword Ice, the deadly blade had red and black ripples throughout the steel, and a golden lion's head pommel with ruby eyes. After the death of Joffrey, possession of the sword passed down to his younger brother, King Tommen Baratheon. The second Valyrian steel sword, forged from ice, was originally given to Jaime Lannister by his father Tywin, but Jaime then passed it on to Brienne of Tarth, naming it Oathkeeper, hoping it would aid Brienne in finding Arya and Sansa Stark and seeing to their safety, thereby fulfilling the oath once made to their mother Catelyn. Oathkeeper was larger than Widow's Wail, but with similar black and red ripples throughout the blade. When Brienne was captured by the Brotherhood without banners, the sword was used as evidence against her, suggesting it was payment for her betrayal of the Starks to the Lannisters. After the Red Wedding and the betrayal of the North, young Ryon Forester had a wooden sword carved and named it Two Brothers, engraving the names of his brothers Ethan and Roderick on either side of the wooden blade. In creating this symbol of solidarity with House Forester, the young boy vowed to avenge his house and elder brother from the betrayal orchestrated by their enemies in House Bolton, Bray, and Whitehill. For the lord of their house, there was the family sword, simply known as the Forester Greatsword. After the death of Lord Gregor Forester at the Red Wedding and the perceived death of Roderick, his heir, the sword was passed down to Ethan Forester, the third-born son of their house. Yet soon he too was killed by Ramsay Bolton, who wished to demonstrate his newfound power in the north. The greatsword would technically pass down to the youngest Forester male, young Lord Ryon, but he was taken as a captive of House Whitehill to ensure Forester obedience. Yet when it was discovered Roderick Forester survived the Red Wedding, he took his place as head of the house and took up the Forester greatsword, vowing to restore his family's power and have vengeance against their enemies. The ancestral two-handed Valyrian steel greatsword of House Tarley, Heartsbane, had been with the Tarley family for 500 years, and is currently in the possession of the head of the house, Lord Randall Tarley, who wielded the sword on behalf of King Renly Baratheon during the War of Five Kings. After Renly's death, House Tarley followed their liege lords in House Tyrell, switching allegiance to House Lannister and King Joffrey Baratheon. The ancestral Valyrian steel greatsword of House Lannister, Brightroar, was lost at sea when King of the Rock, Tommen II, sailed for Valyria, never to be heard from again. Many years later, in 291 AC, Geryon, brother to Tywin Lannister, also took to the seas, vowing to search for their family's lost sword, but he too disappeared during the voyage. For years, Lord Tywin Lannister attempted to replace the sword, but was unable to find a family willing to part with their Valyrian steel. Yet at long last, the Lannisters were able to acquire two Valyrian steel blades, in Widow's Wail and Oathkeeper, forged from ice, the captured greatsword of House Stark. The ancestral sword of House Corbray, Lady Forlorn, was named after a legend from the Age of Heroes, and was held by Andal King Kyle Corbray during the Andal invasion of Westeros. After the king's death in battle, the sword was taken by King Robar Royce II, who had united the First Men of the Vale against the Andal invaders. Eventually, Sir Jaime Corbray killed Robar in battle, taking back the sword of his house. The sword was wielded again during the First Blackfire Rebellion, held by Gawain Corbray during his fight with Daemon Blackfire at the Battle of the Redgrass Field. It was also used during the Battle of the Trident, held by the Lord of Corbray, who died in the fighting. His son, Lyn, then took up the sword, killing the man who attacked his father, and then charging against Prince Lewin Martell, killing the Dornish loyalist commander. For his bravery and skill, the sword was given to Lyn Corbray instead of his elder brother, Lionel, who became head of the house. The Valyrian steel bastard sword of House Mormont, Longclaw, is a hybrid of a single and two-handed blade, held by the Mormont family for 500 years. It was passed down to Jorah Mormont when his father Jeor took the oath of the Night's Watch. But when Jorah disgraced himself, engaging in the slave trade and then fleeing the continent for fear of arrest, he left the sword behind and it was returned to Jeor Mormont, who had become Lord Commander at the Wall. Seeing it as a reminder of his son's dishonor, he put the sword aside until his steward, Jon Snow, saved him from a white attack. Mormont then gave the sword to Jon, and it has remained at his side ever since. Commissioned by Jon Snow and forged by Mikken, the master blacksmith of Winterfell, Needle was made lightweight and slender for the hand of a young girl, but also of strong and deadly steel. The blade was given to Arya, who named it and began training with the sword whenever possible. She later adopted a style of fighting known as water dancing, which allowed her to use her speed and skill with the thin blade more effectively. Though she lost the blade for a time, she recovered it from the dead body of an enemy, then taking it with her to Braavos and the House of Black and White. When ordered to rid herself of all worldly possessions to begin training as a faceless assassin, she could not bring herself to cast the sword aside, and so hid it in a crack of the stairwell leading to the temple. The Valyrian steel sword of King Aegon I, Blackfire, was passed down through the Targaryen kings until Aegon IV, who gave the sword to his bastard son Daemon Waters. The symbolism of the event allowed Daemon to take the name Blackfire, eventually rebelling against his half-brother King Daeron II, who inherited their father's crown. Yet many saw the sword, even more than the crown, as the true symbol of a Targaryen king, and so supported Daemon Blackfire, believing Aegon IV had meant him to inherit the throne. Though the rebellion failed, with Daemon dying at the Battle of the Redgrass Field, Westeros was torn apart by the Civil War, and would continue to see hardship and violence for many years to come. The sword was recovered by Aegor Rivers, known as Bittersteel, who took it to Essos in exile and gave it to Daemon's heirs. Aegor and the Blackfire loyalists would return to Westeros a number of times, engaging in 4 more Blackfire rebellions. Over time, and with the death of Aegor Rivers, the sword became lost to history. Though rumors persist, it may be in the possession of Illyrio Mopatis, suggesting a possible connection between the Pentashi merchant and House Blackfire. The second Valyrian steel sword, brought over by the Targaryens during the conquest of Westeros, Dark Sister, was held by Queen Visenya and may have been forged specifically for her or another Valyrian woman, as it is crafted lighter and for slender, smaller hands. The sword would be passed down to such famous figures as the rogue prince Daemon Targaryen, the Dragon Knight Aemon Targaryen, and was last seen in the possession of Brynden Rivers, called Bloodraven, who held the sword as hand of the king. Yet the ultimate fate of the sword remains unknown, with none sure about whether Bloodraven took the sword with him to the Wall and the Night's Watch, or whether he left the sword behind, possibly in the possession of another. The legendary Red Sword of Heroes, Lightbringer, was said to have been forged by Azor Ahai during the Long Night to fight against the others and liberate the world from impending doom. Legends state Azor Ahai labored for 30 days and nights to forge the sword, but it shattered as he tempered it in water. Again, he tried to forge the sword, this time working 50 days and nights, capturing a lion and driving the sword into its heart, hoping to imbue it with the lion's power. But once again, he failed. Finally, he labored for 100 days and nights and called for his wife, Nissa. With great sadness, he drove the sword into his wife's heart, imbuing it with her soul. At last, he had his weapon, Lightbringer, glowing bright with eternal flame. Though the blade was lost to history after the presumed defeat of the others in the Long Night, Eastern prophecies suggest the sword will return when a new hero emerges to once again battle the darkness. In an attempt to fulfill prophecy, the Red Priestess Melisandre forged a new Lightbringer for Stannis Baratheon, who she believed to be Azor Ahai reborn. And while the sword seemed to shine with flame, it produced no heat, and was therefore unlikely to be a legitimate reincarnation of the Lightbringer sword. Concept and sword art for this video was provided by Markinson Telford and Omega Swords. Please be sure to check out omegaswords.com and facebook.com/omegaswords for more information. A special thanks to all those who have contributed to CivilizationEx. You make these videos possible, and I am eternally grateful for your support. If you would like to help CivilizationEx and want a say in the future content of this channel, click on the Patreon link in the description box below and pledge any amount you'd like on a monthly basis. Or if you would prefer to make a single donation, you can use the PayPal link also in the description below. And please be sure to like and subscribe and click on the links to see more.